Welcome to the Oklahoma Mises Caucus podcast. I'm Kalen Wiggins, one of our state organizers. One of the biggest issues the Mises Caucus supports is having a decentralized free market economic system, including a free market in money with competing currencies, including precious metals like gold and silver, cryptocurrencies, which we're talking about today, or anything else people want to use as money, instead of having to use government-controlled fiat currencies that can be printed nonstop, which results in a loss of purchasing power and a lower standard of living. In this episode, we're joined by Donnie Gebert, former military intelligence specialist who has been focused on the cryptocurrency markets for the past few years. Donnie says a lot of stuff you won't hear anywhere else, but if he's right, you'll want to know about it. You may need to listen to this one more than once to wrap your head around it. It's a little advanced in some places. If you want to hear more from Donnie Gebert, check him out at the nullhypothesisofpolitics.com and the Direct Republic podcast. If you want to learn more about the Mises Caucus, please visit takehumanaction.com. Enjoy the show.
I'm Donnie Gebert. I wrote 2 books. I was in the Army and the Navy. I spent the last three years, maybe 3.5, doing fundamentally nothing but crypto. And I have followed it enough in every way that it can rationally be followed, not so much in the way that it gets advertised on the internet. So I definitely say things that other people don't say about crypto because they don't know how to do signals intelligence, and I do. It just becomes an entirely different rabbit hole, and everybody's like, what reality do I live in? And I'm like, I'm stuck in reality. You're just going to have to hear about it.
Yeah, I've listened to most of the episodes of your podcast, and I've heard you on other podcasts, and you do talk about crypto in a way that I've never heard anybody else talk about, and you have like certain expertise that, or I don't know, you're coming at it from a completely different angle than I've heard, and it's really interesting.
Well, you have to think about it like this. Everybody's kind of adept by now with video games. These are systems. Bitcoin is spoken of by Wall Street assholes as if it is the great savior. And then it's the first blockchain system. So all the libertarians talk about it like it is the great savior. Wall Street agrees with you. We don't want it. That's kind of the world we live in. Like if you look at your TV and Wall Street says, yeah, it's a good thing, you don't want it. Why? Well, they're selling ETF, right? Exchange traded funds. They're not putting Bitcoin in your wallet. They're selling you a product. This is not peer-to-peer revolution. This is middlemanism again. Right? That's really all it is. So then you start looking at Bitcoin as a system. It's 20 transactions per second. It's unscalable. The block times are too far apart, and the liquidity is way too low. 21 million is not going to function for a population of over 1 billion, let alone 7.5. And of course, all the Bitcoin maximalists think that Bitcoin takes over the planet. Of course it can't. I mean, you have to just like, when you take Bitcoin maximalism in total, then just add Ethereum into your brain and say, oh, there's definitely a bunch of maximalism. That can't be correct because Ethereum. So it just gets layered in depth, and that's where it gets down to, you got to start me where you're at, because I know the whole battle space, but I don't know where you're at on it. So you got to reel me in.
I think most of us and the people that are going to be hearing this are pretty new, either like complete beginners or like fairly new to crypto. Can you talk about the differences between Bitcoin and Ethereum? Because those are the ones everyone's heard of pretty much by now.
Okay, so Bitcoin came out as, this is a proof of concept. That's what it's for. There's no way it would ever be a production model. This is the Model T of blockchain. It is absolute. And the beautiful thing is, because we have Model Ts and we have Teslas, there are lots of smart people who start doing really good analogies of, here's the blockchain space, here's the Model T. Now, those people are just trying to innovate all the way to Tesla as fast as they can. You and I do not want a global reserve. We do not want the one true coin. We want a basket of sound money coins. They're not garbage, and they're not fraudulent, unlike all the fiat ledgers. That's what we want. So that's kind of where this is going to come about. Bitcoin comes into the world, and it is the first of a type of thing. So I love Bitcoin for this thing. You know, it is the granddaddy of blockchain, and the manner in which you can merge mine assures that Bitcoin will just be left around here. It's great. I don't care.
Can you explain merge mining real quick?
Merge mining is where multiple coins are being rewarded for mining the Bitcoin blockchain. It doesn't have anything to do with more rewards for Bitcoin. There's other miners, they're mining the same chain. So the Bitcoin chain gets more efficient because other people are basically sapping whatever you would consider the economic value of Bitcoin. As soon as you start merge mining, that next coin just starts bleeding off that very high TPS. Because you're using the same security system, those coins start getting a market valuation where basically they're piggybacking off of Bitcoin. They're cheating. In the way we were all taught to think about it, they're cheating. But in the real world, this is a great way to build a network. The Bitcoin blockchain it's basically just information, but that's what we want to preserve. We want to preserve information and we want to make it immutable because, believe it or not, a bunch of these, lunatics, they just rewrite history on the fly. They'll be rewriting history before our very eyes. If the last 18 months to 2 years and the COVID extravaganza, we're watching history be written and rewritten and written and scribbled off, written in crayon. Somebody has to scribble it off then. It's just ridiculous. So that whole thing, using that one blockchain and then mining it with a bunch of other different coins, the reward system has nothing to do with the Bitcoin blockchain anymore. The reward systems are all on those they have their own reward systems, but they're mining that same thing to make sure that the security element is there. The cool thing about blockchains is they can basically kind of act like the Borg on each other. When one has a good idea, another one can just latch on to the next one and steal. Bitcoin is going to give me my security. Ethereum is going to give me my network effect. Who's going to give me my processing power? You know what I mean? And they're just going to weave it together. And then you get Joe Lubin. He talks about a global operating system. So that's where it all kind of comes together, where the mining of a particular blockchain has multiple ways to be rewarded and multiple ways to be distributed in a network, not just in Bitcoin. It's designed to be an echo chamber and it's designed to be a belief system. And the echo chamber is designed to beat a belief system into you. So that's why it's Wall Street and ETF and Bitcoin. And when you get out of that space, you stick your head in, it's COVID. The echo chamber is really kicking everybody's ass now. And it's really, really bad in the crypto space because I have to live in it. Like it's been echo chamber in the crypto space even before crypto started or before COVID started.
So for people who are like just getting started and like they've heard of Bitcoin and, they're seeing other people getting rich or whatever. And how should somebody start? Like you're not a fan of Bitcoin. Do you think it's worth investing in at all? Or are there better ways? Or what do you think?
Well, I mean, as far as where you're going to put your dollars, the Bitcoin people made their money. It doesn't mean that USD doesn't go up. The thing is, USD is not a unit of measure. The distance between 0 and 1 is a variable. Therefore, when you're measuring everything in dollars, who knows? I can't necessarily tell you Bitcoin doesn't go to $1 million. I can tell you that the fee to send Bitcoin, the transaction fee will be $50 at $1 million Bitcoin. Because that's what 5,000 Satoshis will be if you're and that doesn't mean you're trying to send a whole Bitcoin. Whatever you're trying to send on the network will cost you 5,000 Satoshis and it'll be a $50,000 fee. Or I'm sorry, it'll be a $50 fee on $1 million Bitcoin. So I can't tell you Ethereum isn't going to go way, way up. I can tell you that stuff that's under $1 is suffering USD inflation very well because that's how that works. So I bought Doge at under a penny. I bought Digibyte at like 2.5 cents, and I bought Syscoin at 2.5 cents. And all of them have done fun. Well, Digibyte hasn't done as well, but as far as what am I trying to do? I'm trying to go between 0 and 1. Rather than call it investing. I'm saving USD in a system that is not yet adopted. And I had to do a lot of homework to figure out who's kind of, working on adoption and not. But as far as when you're saving your dollars, a savings plan is where you put your money in it and you just want to get it back out. Okay, that's kind of what savings is. Investing is I'm putting my money in and I expect to get back more. I'm just saving in a currency that's less than $1. So I'm cheating because the dollar is inflating. So because I'm spending I'm purchasing stuff at more than $1 to $1. I'm just calling it a savings plan instead of an investment plan. And I'm waiting for the inflation to jump into my pocket. Or, inflation isn't going to kill me. It's going to help me because I have stuff outside a dollar. And, this is just like all the Europeans understand currencies. They cannot go for 1,000-mile drive and not hit 2 or 3 currencies along the way. I know the euro is handy, but, 1,000-mile drive, you have to hit certain major roads, and you're going to hit enough countries that you might not hit every gas station that'll take a euro. You might hit a local currency. Americans don't have anything like that. We just go thousands of miles in one direction, no problem. Same currency, everything standardized. It just warps your perception about how currency works. And our currency has made our minds simple instead of complex about how currency works.
Well, speaking of the dollar, what do you think about, are we on the verge of economic collapse? Because seems like it's been coming for a long time, and it's like.
So always be wary of a narrative. These people are selling you gloom and doom. So be wary of the gloom and doom narratives. Every time you think the economy's collapsed, remember 2 billion people are going to really try to make that not happen tomorrow. They're going to work at that because that's their job. None of them wants their own piece of it falling apart. And if their piece falls apart, your piece falls apart. So, you got 2 billion other people, same people on your side. It's going to be okay. Is the Fed printing a lot of money? Yes. See, and that's, again, we go back to the education level and then the pragmatism of how quickly can we fix the problem. The German mark, when it took 4 years to destabilize. In 1919, it was 180 marks to 1 ounce of gold. In 1921, it was 20,000. And in 1924, it was 1 million. So you were just washed out. You were really fast. And that was in a non-information age. So how fast could the dollar destabilize? The answer is there's nowhere to run. If the lunatics who run the dollar did one thing correctly, they made sure that there was nowhere to run except the global reserve. And then people had to figure their entire life out without the global reserve, without the SWIFT system. They have to find a way to transfer anything without the SWIFT system, without the dollar. If you can buy, just because OPEC will take other than dollars to buy oil, just because they'll do that doesn't mean any of those payment systems are set up and OPEC is going to send you oil yet. So a lot of work gets done to put infrastructure in for payment systems and trust networks and staking there's all kinds of ways to deal with stuff. But if those roads aren't there, and a lot of us have been given an impression that the infrastructure around us is a lot more robust than it is. If the supply chain management that you're seeing right now is indicative of anything, it's the supply chain wasn't, just in time was sold to everybody as a good idea. There's a great way to have no extra parts laying around. And should the thing snap, wow, we'll just all have to deal with shortages then.
Yeah. What do you think about all the talk of shortages and stuff like that? You think it's overinflated or?
The real change is going to come that it was a dollar-centric world, and that is here. And this is where most of the dollars were, and this is where they make the dollars for the most part. And on this continent, there's 500 million people, and there's 7 billion elsewhere. So the supply chains of the planet are really going to cater to the mass numbers of people. And that is not on this continent. So if we are going to have robust supply chains in many things, they are just going to have to start here. Even if those industries have to start from scratch again, you have to start there. That's a business opportunity for somebody if they know how. But those things have to start here, because the natural flow of supply chains in a non-dollar centric world wouldn't necessarily come to the North American landmass where you and I can find it anywhere near us. And that is going to be the new world where Americans are going to learn to live. When I say like everyone else, I mean everyone else is going to get a taste of what it's like to be an American. Their supply chain just got shorter and ours got longer. And that's going to be there, unless we build out certain things on this continent, they won't be on this continent. And I mean, to give you an idea, Elon Musk just throws his intellectual property out the window. He has a gigafactory. Here's all of the things, schematics you would need to build a Tesla. Do you have a factory? Nope. So you just can't. So some people know that you can't compete with them. They'll tell you all their secrets. And we've been living in a world of lots and lots of secrets, and you don't necessarily realize the most successful people aren't competing with people because of what they know. It's because of how they have developed their business and what they're producing.
Go ahead, Kayla.
I have a question about, so I understand what you're saying, that you're saving your money through currency. I'm wondering if you are investing in any way, and if you are, is it more like you're starting up a business or you're buying land or something like that?
No, not like, I started trying to do this just to get, like, this was originally just how to automate any type of legislative body. And basically you can, if you look on the Syscoin website, there's a reference there. It'll say blockchain as a court of record. And I know you've heard that blockchain is a disruptive technology. I'm not really so much putting, after all the research I've done, and then, the last 3 years, I've been doing a lot of this and not so much working. So I've got 10,000 hours invested in crypto, even though I've only been in it for 3 years. And as far as, would I buy, if I had $4,000 tomorrow, would I purchase Ethereum? No. But that's because I know how I would buy things that are under $1, like Syscoin or Doge, and they have a use case. And as soon as that use case turns on, I'm going to, yes, technically I am investing, but it just makes more sense to people if you say you're taking your dollar and you're going to buy this and it's 20 cents or this and it's 50 cents, because you're going to have more. So that initial getting in doesn't hurt as much, because you took $500. Well, oh, look, I have 1,240 of these instead of 500 now. And then you're sitting around for a little while waiting for some development. But then ADA, Cardano, a lot of the stuff that got pushed in America was 5 to 10 cents a year ago. And now much of it is over $1. So all of what I'm saying is exactly what happened to all of these Cardano people. And much of the US based coins are they're kind of like the show, that they're mostly FUD. I don't buy any of that stuff. I bought Doge under a penny and everyone called me a shitcoin expert. Okay. I just bought a car for $300. Kiss my ass. So, yep, I'm a bona fide shitcoin expert. I know how that works down to a signals intelligence level. And that's why I would just say save instead of invest. If all of these people are trying to sell you products, they're trying to middleman. I understand that it's hard to get paid for information. As a professional information guy, it is absolutely shit trying to get paid for information. So rather than try to get paid for information, it's better to work like Elon and just say, here's my intellectual property. Best of luck to you. I'm just good at destroying things. So blockchain is a very disruptive technology. And when I say blockchain is a court of record, I mean getting rid of legislatures, getting rid of the courthouse. Jury selection could be automated by credentialed professionals would be on the juries. All kinds of stuff that people just have. Fundamentally, a blockchain is the most destructive thing I've ever heard of. I love it, but it really is the most destructive thing I've ever heard of, because it will break, like, there's a lot of people who are selling bullshit with it now, and people don't know that a blockchain isn't just a good idea for everything, but the stuff it's good for, it is holy shit good for. And that's kind of the world, like, it's a little cheeky. We're all these proles and we're like, oh, somebody else gets to print money. If you're the people who print money, you're terrified of this thing. I'm down here full well knowing somebody's shitting their pants over it, and I'm giggling. I get to giggle. And these people have been printing money and writing rules for, 100 million people at a time, and now they get to shit their pants, and I'm gonna giggle.
I think you said like 90% of the Bitcoins are in 10% of the wallets. Is that right?
That was historical. I can probably ballpark you that it's still 70%. I have not looked in the last 6 months.
Do you know if are those like Satoshi or like the early Bitcoin people, or is that
would
just
include
unknown?
That would include the Nakamoto wallet. My understanding is that the float in Bitcoin is only about 5 million. And by float, I mean, those are coins that have moved in the last year or so. That's not, but what you really get there is if there's such a low liquidity, it's very, very easy to leverage the price up or down. So that's where the volatility comes in. 2 years ago, a lot of people, I was even still listening to them, they would be talking to you like they knew how this shit worked. They're finance people. They've been in finance a while, and they're going to talk about this stuff as if they know how it works. Now, you can pretty much tell they don't know. They've been telling me, oh, whales are buying. Whales have been buying for 3 years. They're not done yet. And then you do the math. There are more millionaires than there are Bitcoins. If they were all scrambling to get just one, they'd be fresh out right now. So again, the scale of humanity plus the narrative does not match. So then when I start looking deeper, there's a narrative around Bitcoin. There are people saying they're doing stuff around Bitcoin. Bitcoin cannot perform these things without other second layer solutions and other blockchains, just the stuff that they're selling. It doesn't make sense. And then there's very subtle clues. Mark Cuban says Bitcoin is art. And then Hunter Biden opens up an art gallery. And then the FBI is who stole Ross Ulbricht's coins. So when I tell you the federal government is so eyeball deep in Bitcoin that humanity can abandon it easily and we don't care, it really is mostly on Ethereum anyway. The network effect of Ethereum and how sleek those smart contracts are, it's a good system. All you have to do is scale it. And when you can make it as secure, if you can make Ethereum as secure as Bitcoin and scale it, you're there. And there's a bunch of people using scaling solutions. Syscoin is going to be the scaling solution for Ethereum. It is a bit of an interoperability thing. So I don't want to say it's going to be the one, but if we start looking at who's going to provide much of the horsepower to that, Syscoin is probably going to provide 50% of a scaling of the horsepower for the first bit of scaling solutions that come up. Syscoin will be putting 50% of the ass into that, and then the rest of that network will be spinning up together. And that's kind of a ballpark guess, but just looking at those blockchains about who does what TPS as they link them together to try to make them go, Syscoin's already running way faster than some of the other ones. And then there's when they all, with their powers combined, it's like 4 million TPS. So that's scaled shoppability all over the planet. Good.
What does Ethereum get TPS wise?
Oh, Ethereum is very low. The point is to find it a scaling solution. Syscoin, you can put ERC20 tokens on Syscoin and then trade them as fast as Syscoin.
So any of the tokens on Ethereum can be moved over to the Syscoin network, and where it's way faster.
Yes.
Okay.
And then here's where you got to be like a really good architect, but I'm a really good insurgent. So an architect put Syscoin and Ethereum together. There is a contract on Ethereum called SYSX, and it is an ERC20 contract. And Syscoin can go right over to that contract. It's a complicated process, and you and I do not want to attempt it. But there are reasons, and it's kind of like an architect and developer level thing. It's not what normal people in the market would do. My point is there is a footbridge that goes from Syscoin to Ethereum with no USD price oracle. It looks like a Borg boarding party.
I've heard you say that. Can you explain what that means? Because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Because, okay, so Syscoin Syscoin is a different blockchain than Ethereum. But then there is an ERC20 contract called SYSX, where the Syscoin will poop into that ERC20 contract and become ERC20 tokens. So because there is this very incestuous bridge there, I'm certain that there is a way to run not price oracle. At which point I start wondering, why isn't Syscoin and Ethereum running at 1-to-1, at least in USD? Because they have a very, very married relationship. along that bridge. Those two things touch each other outside of all of the price oracles and all the exchanges.
I've heard you say that, and I've looked into it, and I think I used like Uniswap or one of those decentralized things like that.
Yeah.
And I put in, Sysx on one side and then to Ethereum, and it was like, 99.99. So it was basically 1-to-1. So I know that there's some legitimacy to what you're talking about.
What?
So I have no idea. Like, I don't understand it, and I don't know what the implications of that are.
So here's the easiest way I could try to put it in your head. There's a USD Bitcoin pair, and that's where there's one Bitcoin and you get a Bitcoin price. And then there's a USD Ethereum pair. Well, then there's an Ethereum Bitcoin pair, and it's not measured in USD. It's measured in Ethereum. So at a certain you'll start seeing an arbitrage point when the price of USD or the Bitcoin price goes up way high against Ethereum. You'll start seeing arbitrage opportunities. Ethereum used to be 50-to-1 with Bitcoin. Today it's under 12. So while everyone has been told watch Bitcoin and wait for the ETF, Ethereum went from $95 to $4,000 and has been gobbling Bitcoin from the bottom. While everybody watches the US, this is how I know it's Wall Street fuckery. Like if it's accidental, it'll happen and then it'll stop. When it's Wall Street fuckery, it'll keep happening and happening and happening. The narrative and the price shift will match. That's bullshit. You can't coordinate an entire market of people trading and then get a narrative out of it. So these people are coordinating. You've seen this with the Robinhood story where, some of those hedge funds got punched in the dick because the Robinhoodies coordinated against them. I think there's a little narrative there, but there's probably some truth to it. What you should really understand is that the hedge fund guys can watch the order book, tell everybody set your 20% stops. They watch all those orders go in. They'll leverage something, knock the shit down, take all that stuff on the cheap, and then let it fly. And that's big boy financial warfare tactics, and that's the way it is. So they tried to do this stuff in the market, but these systems, when there's arbitrageable pairs that are outside of Wall Street and outside of USD, those are controlled markets and controlled, the USD is a controlled instrument technically. Well, here's how it's controlled. It's paradoxically controlled by being uncontrolled. It's not a stable unit of measure. It could fundamentally be printed by anyone who has the technology, or if you can open up a digital account and dump digital dollars into it, boom, you just type yourself money. So these systems have been open and fraudulent in every way. The government has exploited, if you use the word value, it is correct. It is not a word you want to use in association with anything you're doing that you don't want to move. You don't want your ounce of gold to be subjected to value. You want it to be subjected to ounces and purity. You want it to be 9999 and an ounce. You don't want those values to change. They get that to change in the dollar. They get it to change. And I can tell you, they basically go sub-zero. Printing up a bunch of money is a liquidity event that the market figures out later. They dump the money on the market and then it goes where it goes. And then we see how much the water rises. That's kind of how it works. Well, they're just pulling money out of the bottom. So the fiat money machine is a weapon of war. And these people have not only weaponized the distance between 1 and 0, but they do know how to cherry pick below 0. Every math trick you can imagine, because the dollar is hinged to nothing.
You don't think the global economy is going to collapse in the next 6 months or a year or something like that?
No, and I think a lot of those ships are backed up because the payment systems in America, they say it's a shipping container problem. There's lots of ways where you can caught what the regulations in the port of somewhere where you could only stack the containers too high, uno, dos, whereas the industry standard and the containers are built for 4 high. So when some ignorant politician says, I have an empty lot that's only 2 miles from the port, I want to rent it out, I will get a regulation that will cause a backflow, that will cause not just them to rent my property, but now this guy I know is going to have a trucking, his trucking company is going to benefit from this regulation because now they have to store the shipping containers 2 miles away. So all of these ignorant supply chain issues, right down to the regulations, they're going to get coded away. Industry best practices always defeat authoritarians. The end. So all the industry best practices are going to take away all of them. You know, Nancy Pelosi will be the last generation of stock trading portfolio sons of bitches in Washington, because that's all this game really is. It's an information game. We live in an information age, and now the professional, okay, not in the medical profession, but at least in the, in the hard sciences, this stuff is getting passed around real fast, where yes, we're going to stack them 4 high. And when you realize that you're not going to stack them 4 high, then you realize you have to go change out a government, because these people have just bureaucratically parasitized an entire area and part of an industry. Watching movies like Goodfellas and watch all the mafia movies, and you'll start seeing about every way you can get into someone else's pocket. And the regulations ones are where the government they get their way. It's so bullshit, man. Like, it's so everywhere that, it's in the White House. Joe Biden is playing a game with everyone right now. Like, this is where we're at. An infantilized nation where Joe Biden plays a fucking game where he threatens people with regulations just to see how many of them hyperventilate.
Jeff, you have any questions? You look like your brain is over there stirring.
I'm on information overload. Donnie, full disclosure, I actually am a developer. But I've never taken the leap to get balls deep into understanding crypto hashing and everything that's involved with it. But listening to you talk, now I've got 20 tabs open on my browser ready to dive into.
Go read my first book and figure it out. Instead of party politics are never going to function. Half of what you guys are doing is correct. It's called networking. The other half is called party politics, which will fail. I guarantee it. It was designed to fail. This is all designed so that people can feel like they're involved. But to be honest, the entire country has just been running on a printing press. It's been running on a black budget printing press. Catherine Austin Fitts found a $20 trillion hole. Lord, that's not a hole in housing and urban development and DOD. That's a hole in the money system. You can't have a 20 trillion missing anything without a de facto hole in your money system. So when I say this is a huge Potemkin village with a big cash machine behind it. That's it. And as soon as that thing fails, they're putting in the infrastructure, and all the Potemkins have no idea. The Potemkins have no idea what a dollar is.
What was your first book?
A Direct Republic, the Null Hypothesis of Politics. And it's automating a legislature. It's not just you really need to understand the theory of a blockchain, but after that, you're going to use a blockchain, but everyone will have a blockchain in their hands. So it's the describing about how the human will do so.
So you think crypto is going to be what gets us out of the fiat problem?
Yes. Unequivocally, fiat is going away. Now, I can't, 90 days? No. 2030, the dollars you hold right now in 2030, even at the advertised Fed rate, 15% a year, 8 years, you go do the math about what your purchasing power will look like. But my balls just started to ache saying that out loud. So that 8 years of 15% year over year, yeah, your money's gone. in 2030. At the advertised rate today, your money is gone in 2030. So I don't know.
Buy property. Buy property.
Well, remember, they print your home value inflates, they tax you at a higher rate because your home value went up. This is hitting everybody coming and going. It's designed. This is not an accident. So this fraud, some of this is just straight up fraud. And it's coming down, like, I look at this more like a Berlin Wall type thing. This is coming down. The question is, what kind of landing is it? And as long as the supply chains for food keep running and the power stays on, all is well. All is well. I was here in the 80s when there was no fucking internet. We will survive without the internet. You know, the internet goes out for 6 hours and people are in a paper bag in a corner. I'm like, you know, do you remember rotary dial anything? You know, remember when we didn't carry a supercomputer in our pocket? Remember that? Like, so I thoroughly remember the 80s. I'm fine. I'm not panicking.
I think the government and the bankers have like bought up so much Bitcoin that they essentially control it and are manipulating it. Is that basically?
I'm saying that they have a media station, and that narrative is really what's kicking everybody's ass. And if everybody, like, you know, what the manner in which these people talk about Bitcoin, it sounds like there's a ton of people involved. There's obviously not. All the millionaires have not tried to buy one, not even close.
Do you think that's just, you know, old people, old rich guys not being up on the newest thing? Or do you think they're intentionally avoiding it because they know something we don't?
No. I mean, do the numbers. There are shit tons of those coins. At least 70% of the coins have not moved in multiple years. That's millions of millionaires who didn't get one. I mean, there's not even a rational supply and demand fight amongst millionaires. There is not a rational fight amongst millionaires for them. Michael Saylor seems to be the guy buying Bitcoins. And then I'll just, he's from MIT where Epstein was. So I notice a lot of scumbags and a lot of troublemakers seem to like Bitcoin. That's what I noticed.
Well, it is interesting that all of the development and like all of the practical, like real world use case things, projects, they're all on Ethereum, and Bitcoin is off by itself without that functionality. So it is weird that all the hype is Bitcoin instead of Ethereum. And, you know,
in the same period of time that you just spoke of, Ethereum went from 50 to 1 to Bitcoin to 11 point under 12. It bumps under 12 today. So while Bitcoin is getting talked up, Ethereum is going up and eating Bitcoin along the way. And then we go, you know, when you get back to what is Bitcoin, it is a prototype. It's the Model T. And I don't argue against this thing being, you know, more of a collectible than a cash system. Let's put it that way. So I don't hate on Bitcoin as an art piece or a collectible or something like that. Will you be able to spend that art piece or collectible? Yeah. You'll be able to exchange it. It's one of these weird things. It's kind of like where art and math meet. It's weird like that. So because you can spend your art directly, cool. Then because you can do that with this particular system, you get all kinds of other things. You hear a lot of bullshit about NFTs, and you know, people have refrigerator art and it's $1 gajillion. Okay, here's where I say this is a Wall Street FUD narrative, and here's what they're covering up. They're covering up that land deeding is being done on blockchain. And you can look up Propy, P-R-O-P-Y. And NFT is the ultimate kill your court. Like, as soon as I found out you could put a deed in your wallet, I wrote that book because that was the end of the courthouse. I can now decentralize the deed system and I can make it objective. That way, nobody can mess with the deeds. Nobody can commit eminent domain. Nobody can tax. So even if the system says so, when you put the deeds on a blockchain, you then have to militarily take the land because your deeding system has worked around centralization point of theft and fraud.
So you think crypto can make governments irrelevant, or at least the courts, the government courts?
Crypto is going to turn every person into a senator. Don't be a dummy, because otherwise you'll be the senator who gets kicked a lot. But really, everyone will be a senator. So if you don't go to the meeting and you don't put your money in the bucket and you don't show up, not every senator can do everything anyway. So it starts to rationally put you in your own space where you're only involved in the things you're involved in, and you're not involved in the things that you're not, and you're contributing to the things you're contributing to. And there's lots, it's so much simpler. To give you an example, your city runs on a sales tax. That's a bullshit word. This is a maintenance fee because that's what's taking care of the maintenance of the stuff around here. You use it. It's for infrastructure. Local infrastructure costs money. So sales taxes are really not a tax. They are, and it should be known the difference between a tax and a fee. You are using the stuff in your area. You do drive on the streets. So when I say the merchants have taken care of the roads, the merchant is the one who's going to collect that fee. And you're glad to have the merchant. You're glad to have the road. You aren't glad to have a centralization point where your tax dollars get pissed into some ignorant education for your children. There's so many social justice topics in school now that they should no longer be called public schools. They should be called government schools because that's what they are. So when there's no deed system, because the deed system is on the blockchain, that means no eminent domain and no land taxation. So really your 8th grade civics class gets to be 8th grade and 9th grade, and it gets about twice as long, but you don't, like, a bunch of this stuff that the government does, it's just not going to be able to do it anymore. That printing press is going to run out of steam. That which is left over, that which is worth maintaining, adult Americans will maintain. We do live on a land, as far as I'm concerned, Canada and America and Mexico should all just be the same thing, because having an immigration issue on the Texas border is dumb. Having it on the bottom of Mexico down near, this continent gets real skinny way down yonder. So if we could just head them off at the pass there, and everybody who gets north of there, all you really have to do is train people and maybe screen them for certain diseases. But that's it. They have to be trained in at least like language. When you're training everyone to be your own senator, they're coming across the border and they're going to get an 8th and a 9th grade civics lesson. Welcome to America. Bureaucrats have made most of our lives ignorant and difficult. As a security expert, I don't give a shit about Joe Biden or his face. He is irrelevant. There is not one human being that should be in charge of this entire continent. There isn't one human being that should be in charge of the entire army. No, you should not have a singular chain of command. Every branch, it would be a good idea just to have the 4 branches of the military that we have, or 5. Yeah, the Coast Guard apparently is its own. The Coast Guard should rationally be part of the Navy. The Marines should rationally be part of the Army, but then everybody should be allowed to say, no, this is a dumb fucking war. We're not going. That's really how it's supposed to be in real life, but we're not paying attention to how stuff actually functions. We're being trained to do it like a bunch of idiots. Well, now there's enough technology around where we can start passing the word very fast, and we can start breaking systems that have been here a long time. And it's going to get way weirder than this. This is the tip. We're playing just the tip right now.
For people who want to get started, do you think going through centralized exchanges is the best way, or is there an alternative that for somebody to get started?
Probably. I don't even know, like, there's not a lot of decentralized exchanges available now. I used Ether Delta. I used Binance before it was closed. I don't use Binance US. I have a Bittrex account. I have a Coinbase. I had an Abra. Centralized exchanges are most likely what's going to be best for most people. It's going to let them throw their digital US dollars into crypto as fast as possible. It's going to cost you KYC. Okay. If you don't want people to know who you are, why?
Yeah, the governments make all the exchanges ask you a ton of questions and jump through a bunch of hoops. But
to a certain extent there, it doesn't really matter. And here's why. The trick is you're only moving your USD into crypto and you're not moving it back out. If you're going to move it back out, you have to be careful. You have to learn how to do that. Otherwise, you may accidentally commit a taxable transaction where you could have done that without it. Currency transactions are not taxable. You pay a fee to exchange with whoever you're exchanging currency with, but those aren't exchange. However, if for some reason, let me rephrase, it can be interpreted by a prosecutor, a la Kyle Rittenhouse, Jesus goddamn Christ. So because it can get so ignorantly interpreted, you have to do the dance of, when I move anything into USD, that will be monitored. And I just do this balls. I make Big Brother watch. You got to get sadistic about it. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to make you watch. I will move my crypto into DAI or USDC or USDT or BUSD or HUSD or some stable coin. And I will let it sit there for 24 hours. And after that, I will then move it into USD. No USD appreciation was gained from moving from a stable coin to USD. So,
I'm sorry, can you explain stable coins real quick for people who don't know?
So a stable coin is just, here's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a blockchain dollar. So wherever you get it, let's just say Binance. Binance has a BUSD account, and you put USD in this account, and then there should be USD pooped out on a blockchain. The end. It should, the smartest ones would just be a one-way street where it would be a Viking funeral. Your dollar would go up to this blockchain and it would incinerate and then become anew on the blockchain, and that would be it. And that's not how all the fiat systems work. And this is the fundamental issue as to why you really have to, you got to learn currency like a European. You got to understand that little bit of arbitrage you might get out of currencies, because then you have to watch a coin of your choice along several pairs. Your coin ETH, your coin dollar, your coin Bitcoin, your coin BNB. And you got to watch all those pairs for when there's a move in Bitcoin, what happens to my coin? Because all of those pairs are kind of, if you go watch the Fourier series video that Destin has from Smarter Every Day, you'll see how you can braid a bunch of waveforms together. Well, all these charts are waveforms. Well, when you have 5 charts, in a filing cabinet, if you had a filing cabinet full of charts, how would you braid them all together? And that's the answer is a Fourier series. Well, when you have to watch them just to see how they react around each other, that's the fun part. They react around each other. Because arbitrage is lucrative, people set up bots.
You don't think it's just bots? It's not like people intentionally manipulating the prices or
bots? Okay, so listen, when you're saying price,
and I'm sorry, like who's running the bots? Like what is that?
It assumes there's one bot. There's one person and one bot. Nope. Somebody has a better bot and it's closer, and sometimes it misses. And remember, it's not one use case. It's every dummy trying. It's the successful ones plus every dummy trying.
So it could be governments. It could be anybody programming in their basement.
Correct.
Okay.
So mining is the way you get the coin without competition, but you compete to mine. So at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, like, how technically savvy are you? You got to be real savvy to play the mining game. People bought dams. People bought hydroelectric dams for cooling and for power just to run Bitcoin stuff. That's a lot, man. Who are you thinking you can compete? Like, I can't compete with anybody who could buy themselves a dam and renovate it to take computer equipment, and now they can water cool the equipment because hell, it's right there. So you're competing with everybody on the planet, every use case, and some dude buys a hydroelectric dam and you feel like an idiot. So rather than attempt to compete on said level, I went into the market and said, why are these things moving around each other? And the answer was arbitrage. Because the Bitcoin ETH pair and the ETH Litecoin pair and the Litecoin Bitcoin pair do not report to each other in USD, there was arbitrage available in crypto. It wasn't available in USD. And I murdered this shit in 2018 because I wasn't trading back into dollars. So I was waiting for these coins to offset against each other, and I was just throwing them back and forth amongst themselves, running up my own score. But then my USD value of that portfolio, I sold none of the coins. I traded up, I kept my crypto coins, and then the USD value of that whole portfolio tanked, even though I didn't sell nothing. I'm like, wait a minute, how do I not move anything out of this portfolio, but the USD drops 90%? How does that happen? That's when my real career started. I had to go, I was on the journey. What is a United States dollar? I had to find out what it was because apparently I didn't know. How do you move a dollar price like a tide moves in and out along a shoreline? What? How? I want to know how. And the answer is, you're going to offset Bitcoin and Ethereum prices against the USD price of a smaller coin. So every small coin is trading in Gwei, trading in Satoshis, and trading in pennies. And then they're just getting braided together in that Fourier series by adults, because Fourier series does not appear in nature. So then it's keeping those things all together to where I can't eat those arbitrageable spreads anymore. Every time I try to go get them now, lo and behold, either that pair is closed, that system is currently down for maintenance. It doesn't matter. Those spreads will not be available because adults are in charge. You can't, again, if this was accidentally happening, the coordination problem wouldn't be solved. I'd be finding those pairs. I'd be finding these places. They're not there. So that's how I figured out that what that Fourier series is doing is keeping me from arbing like I was.
So this is like super advanced stuff, and it's some of it's going over my head, a lot of it. But like, what are the implications? Like, what can people take away from that as like practical? Because
a Fourier series doesn't exist in nature, all I'm saying is that the crypto market is being paved for heavy traffic. It's being assembled by adults in plain sight. Nobody can stop participation. So even though that market is being assembled right now, if a billion people tried to participate in that tomorrow, it could be a real problem, but nobody really knows it's there.
So the cryptocurrency landscape is being set up to be ready to transfer the economy over to that, and right?
Everybody has been told it's all about USD. It's all about USD. Okay, to a certain extent, it's about USD, but to a certain extent, it's about system functioning. And you know, the ETH Litecoin and the Litecoin Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Ethereum pairs form a nice little arbitrage circuit that has nothing to do with dollars. So when you look at those one unit, you know, there's the Bitcoin system is 21 million. The Litecoin system is 84 million. They're not all mined out yet. And then Ethereum is like 150 million. Those all have a relative value of one, but they have different liquidity pools and they have different use cases. So because that relative value of one is shifted by what? It's shifted by their USD price. huh? So then you go back to Joe Lubin and he's like, this is a global operating system. So instead of looking at the USD value, you start just looking at what do all these other pairs do when, never mind the USD, what are all these other pairs doing? Like, holy shit. So you just really start looking at the computer talk to itself, because everyone else is basically speaking to this financial machine in dollars. They're speaking to it in fiat. But when you start watching the internal workings of the machine talk to itself, it's still arbitrage, but the arbitrage is taking place in non-dollar pairs. So you're watching these non-dollar pairs move while you're watching the dollar pairs, like, holy Jesus, this is like, it looks like a puppet master.
So there's is there no one, I guess, unit of measure? Like if the USD is such a bad one, is there any that are more reliable, or you just have to watch how they move against each other?
Well, here's what I mean by reliable. Bitcoin is capped to 21 million. There's X amount in the world. A Bitcoin is divisible by 100 million, and nobody prints them. Litecoin is 84 million. They're mined and brought into the world. They're done in a unit of one, divisible by 100 million. Nobody prints them. USD, divisible into 100 pennies, every penny printed, every dollar printed, every dollar not hinged to any relative value in three-dimensional space, not pegged to anything in the market, nothing, pegged to absolutely nothing. Therefore, completely manipulable. And I could just keep going to describe how that gets done. It'll just make your fucking head hurt, I promise. It'll just make your head hurt, but that's what DAI does.
So quick question, Donnie, you were talking about the Fourier loop, and you're not able to anymore see any actual arbitrages in those groupings of coins you're monitoring. Is that true?
Not okay, though. They were crazy.
There was a bunch of them at like really disparate.
I was trading one called Cloak, and I was making 100,000 Satoshis per trade per coin. I was mopping. What? Yeah, these were $20 coins. I was trading 100 of them at a time, and they would flex from like 160,000 Satoshi to 300, 320. Like they would just double. So I'd throw them out the window and buy them back again, throw them out the window, buy them back again. But this is exactly while I'm doing it, I'm sitting here going, is this stable? I'm a weird video game player. I've played hundreds of video games. I started playing video games in the 80s. I've played ColecoVision through World of Warcraft, through StarCraft 2. Okay, I've done them all. I've got every video game mechanic you can play with, I'm playing with while I'm watching these markets be put together. At which point, there's one mechanic that you don't have in any of your video games. Zero. It's not there. Everything's an affirmative input. Everything's an affirmative something. It's not a nothing. These people have figured out how to manipulate below zero, because the zero in USD is not the zero in other things. Therefore, we can peg zero to something else, and the USD zero is just a show. That's how an iceberg works. 1/9 of the iceberg is above the water. Well, if you understand how an iceberg works, and you understand that someone can drop your relative value below zero, now you got a whole iceberg worth of drop down there at 10x leverage, right? Well, 1 above, 9 below. You got 10x leverage worth of hiding below zero. It's every shitty game Wall Street can play. I don't think you understand. I'm pissed. Like every time I'm describing this to you, I'm describing how some Wall Street fuck commits fraud, and how a blockchain system isn't going to allow him to do it anymore. I'm happy. I'm glad. But it's just, it gets really complicated. You have to remember, all I've been doing is studying Sith Lords and Wall Street fucks. So I know how to get all of you. I'll steal all your stuff. You'll be wishing for Squid Game by the time I was done.
I have to jump off here, Donnie. I just want to know any other core advice that you could impart for us.
Like, you have to do your homework. You have to do lots and lots of homework. I have a podcast that will help. I have a podcast, and then I was on a bunch of podcasts. Most of them are about decentralized legislation. Some of them are about crypto and money stuff. So just understanding, you have to do a lot of research before you put a lot of money in. However, go put $50 in just to make your guts hurt. It's only $50, but you'll start watching it and you'll start thinking about it more, and you'll start dragging yourself through more of the homework because you're just a little bit invested in it. But don't put big money in until you've done enough homework to say, I know why I'm doing this. To give you an example, I'm like, that's a Fourier series. I'm sitting in my garage alone going, that's a Fourier series. That doesn't happen in nature. According to all of these readings, I should buy this, because this isn't a price signal. This is some mathematical equation that's shitting itself out into nature. That's not how that happens. Somebody is performing maintenance or security or something here. So that's how I ended up down to Syscoin. When you're doing investing in the market, you're down to, these people just purchased a gold mine. So if they go bankrupt, there's still this land to sell, and I'll get my money out of this company back because I'm on the A shit. I have A shares. They're going to sell this there's a $12 million piece of property. I'm getting my money back. That's a good deal for you. Probably not the guy getting C shares, but it's a good deal for the guy getting A shares. So just make sure you're getting A shares when you're buying.
Can you talk about the weird thing where Syscoin spiked to 96 Bitcoins one day?
I was watching a bunch of coins on charts way back when, and I found a half a dozen of them that spiked up to 1 Bitcoin, 2 Bitcoins, 4 Bitcoins. Veritasium was the one that spiked to 4 Bitcoins. Then Propy, the one I was talking about, the land deed one, that one spiked to 2 on these charts. And I'm like, that can't be right. Those things were 30,000 Satoshis. 1 Bitcoin is 100 million. That's not a little bump. That's a huge bump. I'm like, okay, so I get real incredulous about all this. Then one of them spikes to 96. Now, my understanding is that trade was either never settled or something. The point is, it got me to start looking at these systems differently. If you think someone was trying to trade that, everyone's crazy. But if they were doing systems testing and they were testing money velocity and who can handle how much, wow, look at that. This magical mini TPS coin goes right off the charts when they step on the gas. Whoop, right all the way through the roof because they step on the gas. Okay, that makes a hell of a lot more sense than most of what people are telling you about how prices are formed. The more you listen to these people, they're magical conjurers of the word value. Every time they're supposed to give you the next piece of the puzzle, value shows up, because the word doesn't mean anything. You insert your subjective desire into that space. That's what a value is. Boop.
So do you think a lot of the Ethereum projects will move over to Syscoin? Or like, what do you think is stopping that from happening so far?
When you say they move, I don't mean that the contract leaves Ethereum and goes to Syscoin. It just means that the liquidity might move from Ethereum. A bunch of the liquidity might move over to Syscoin so that it can move quickly.
Okay. Well, I know Syscoin is trying to get new projects launched on their level 2 that just started or is about to start.
Right, but that's projects launched. I'm saying all of the stable coins that are ERC20 tokens can just go over to Syscoin and run really fast. You don't need any change to the base contract to do that.
So that just does the same thing as Ethereum, but faster and cheaper, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where those stable coins will be you'll be able to use them at the store and you won't be paying an Ethereum gas fee.
So you would expect more projects to go with the cheapest, fastest option versus Ethereum, where because it's I guess everybody's waiting on Ethereum 2.0.
Ethereum
but
isn't an option. That's the fun part. If you move 100 million stable coins, 100 million USDC, it costs X amount of Ethereum. But if you move 1 USDC, it costs the same amount of Ethereum, and it's more than $1.
Yeah.
So nobody's going to be moving small purchases on Ethereum. That's how, it's another maximalist debunking point. If you have $1 million Bitcoin and it's $50 transaction fee, does the world even bother pricing eggs in Satoshis when the transaction fee is so much more expensive? And then you look at, you have to understand, a lot of the world is kind of fiat-y. Like, we value stuff in dollars. There's land and there's no dollars in existence for this piece of land. If you want to buy this piece of land, you have to go find dollars and roll them across this piece of land to make that transaction happen. All of your stocks, for the most part, are nothing but a fiat sum. You just put fiat in there, the value of the fiat might go up and down, but the overall liquidity pool of dollars is somehow soaked up by land. It gets soaked up by stocks. It gets soaked up by cars. All of the oil, gold is money and oil is currency. So you're going to keep the gold. The oil is going to get processed and it's going to disappear. The land will still be here regardless of a house on it. That car is eventually going to rot and become gone. So we value a currency, but it's not a money. So we're not stacking solid, tangible things against other solid, tangible things and stacking disposables against, durables against durables and non-durables against non-durables. We're not doing that. We're using this magical, valuable tool to just slap a stamp on everything. So if you were to actually let the dollar die and attempt to value everything in Bitcoin, Bitcoin would be worth $1 billion a piece, because all of the land and all of the cars and all of the eggs, all of the everything would have to then get passed around in Bitcoin. Like, it just doesn't make any sense like that. But when you make a multi-currency world, it's irrelevant. The currencies then work for you because they attack each other.
What are some of the cool projects or interesting ways crypto is being used practically that people may not know about?
Listen, deeds and money. Deeds and money change the way humans function, period. There won't be, if there are nation states, they will be global nation states, and you will be some people will, it'll be, what's that movie where there's 5 clans? One of them is Dauntless and Candor, and it'll just be like that, where it doesn't matter where you live, and we don't have politics like that. And some people kick in on defense, so some people don't like that because those ones might be violent. Politics is such a dumb thing. Like, when you do politics in a small town, it's supposed to work out a lot, but it usually works out better. But when people are broke and when people from your state capital are in charge, it gets bad. When people from the state capital show up with money, all of a sudden nobody's broke, but now your sovereignty goes down the road. And this is what has happened for hundreds of years. All of the sovereignty in your little small town got picked away, picked away, picked away, picked away.
You think that people will be able to buy coffee with crypto, just seamless anytime soon? I mean, what do you think the timeline is? Yeah.
Within the next year. There were some places that were advertising that they were going to take crypto this year. However, I have watched the Biden administration kick several cans down the road where they don't want to address an issue. And here's where I go back to, we're living in a huge Potemkin village. Donald Trump could have released a whole bunch of that JFK stuff. Why didn't he? The answer is that whole fiat money machine is a weapon of war. And because it's a weapon of war, nobody really understood how the economy was propped up by it. And he couldn't tell everybody, because if he did, the systems, when the systems have a problem, you have to have the infrastructure underneath them to catch it. Syscoin is just really getting to the place now where it can handle a lot of traffic. Like, it could have handled some baseline traffic before, but it's only getting to a lot of traffic now. Like 210,000 TPS is almost all the other blockchains put together, is what that is.
So what does that mean practically, having that much TPS? What does that enable it to do? You're saying like it's
that doesn't,
it can be used all over the world at the same time for transactions, and
that doesn't really replace Visa. To give you that idea, Visa is, it's not a secure system. That's the issue. Visa is a big network that they monitor themselves, really, because they don't want to be defrauded. But so, and then in the next year, that's going to go up to about, like I said, once everything is interoperable, it's looking like 4 million, and that's supposed to be Q4 22. But that, and listen, to a certain extent, I don't understand why some of this isn't happening now. Because while you don't, the systems that are there, well, Visa is probably more reliable than crypto today. However, that's, as soon as that changes, you'll be able to use stable coins. You'll be able to use crypto at the store. You know, if Doge is $1, you can pay for carrots in Doge. I guarantee there'll be a lot of money velocity, because there's a lot of people who bought Doge. Doge is 17 cents today. So if you go spend $500 in Doge and that goes to $1, you will be $3,000-ish. Where did you look that you said SysX was somehow?
I try to find it. It's been months since I did it. I think it was either on 1inch or Uniswap, one of those.
Yep.
And I put it in, and because I didn't really know much. I knew that SysX was, the ERC20, and so I just put it in because I'd been listening to you, and it was, I think I have some screenshots somewhere. I can send them to you.
But that's a signal. Listen, that's called signals intelligence. When you can find a mathematical discrepancy somewhere. Now, there are certain things that can throw errors. So I'm not saying you see a one-time error.
Well, and now what does that mean? Like, that doesn't mean that one Syscoin equals one Ethereum, does it? Or does it?
Well, here's why I'm looking at this. When you're talking about USD price, clearly that's not correct.
Right.
But when you're talking about functioning, I don't know how a very savvy arbitrage feller will not figure out how to roll that bridge.
Well, you've talked about CZ, the guy that owns Binance, right?
Right. At which point I've found enough signals coming out of there that, to me, the trick is not to roll the bridge. The trick is to roll the market and let that bridge just, it looks to me like, I think CZ is in charge of the Great Reset.
So is he a good guy or bad guy? Because you've talked about, think so?
He's operating in the open. Listen, he's still alive. He would be fucking dead for playing this game.
Well, you've talked about how he's way ahead of the politicians. I've tried to find out about him, but what do you know about him?
He's the owner of Binance. So right. when I say I have signals coming out of Binance, he's in charge. It's his joint. It's his outfit. And then days that certain pairs get open and close. Syscoin used to have 3 primary pairs: Syscoin Bitcoin, Syscoin Ethereum, and Syscoin BNB. And then at strategic moments, the Ethereum and BNB pairs were closed and other fiat gateways were opened up.
So you think there was some arbitrage going on?
No, I'm certain that it was going on because I was doing it. And when I couldn't do it anymore, there was only one guy left on earth who could.
Okay.
Like Benzow.
So you were doing it and then it got shut off. And
every opportunity I can get to run an arbitrage loop, I would try. And if I couldn't, I would find out why. So when I start finding that every time I try to go play fuckery in the market, an adult has told me no. What I am finding is that the market is that's architecture. Okay. This is infrastructure being installed to prevent or catch a fiat collapse. And I don't think Donald Trump released those records because he couldn't let certain pieces of information out, or the whole Potemkin village comes crashing down before the supply chains are put up, before the money system is fixed, before all these things happen. Now they're all talking about June or January 2022, all these social media platforms. Trump's got a social media platform coming out. I'm watching the political sphere lose. It's losing to adults who know how to build stuff. They're not taking no for an answer.
And you got to put out a newsletter or do more episodes or something. Then
listen, the thing is, it doesn't change. If you go listen to all the stuff I've already done, you'll hear all of this again. Listen, most of the fucking Liberty sphere is nothing but clickbait retards looking for Patreon money. They're putting out content, the same kind of content you put in a porta potty, clicks and likes and shares. That's what they're about. They're not about doing anything interesting. Remember when everybody was libertarians and they would sit around labeling each other? Now
still going on.
They're post-libertarians.
Yeah.
Still doing it. Same thing. So they're talking their game and they're collecting their clicks and their likes and their shares. What are they really doing? They're not fixing any of the problems. They're not participating in any real solutions. And some of this stuff is coming out. If I put together software and expected it to run on the old internet, it might not even work right, because the people who run the old internet might intentionally try to thwart my shit by turning just reroute shit on me. So it wouldn't work. So now I'm looking at Web3 come up and like, I have foreseen this shit for a long time, to the level of I wrote books on it.
What do you think is like the possibility of like a complete like infrastructure meltdown, or just like, I don't know, the powers that be being so terrified of crypto that they shut down the internet or something?
Almost zero.
No? Is it impossible, or that you just don't think they would do it?
Shutting down the internet is really a concept. The internet is not owned by one person. It doesn't have a switch. If one thing gets unplugged, it doesn't come apart. It would have to be a cataclysm, at which point it becomes far worse than internet lossage or lossage of crypto. Or they have to hit like power in an area. It's really a piecemeal effort. I don't think Trump could have used the emergency broadcast system if he wanted to.
Why do you say that?
Because that's the infrastructure that that the emergency broadcast system actually used by. It's not owned by the government. That's all just a bunch of private companies that agreed to let the FCC put a screeching tone over it and some messages. But when they decide to not to, because they don't like that president, because that president isn't part of the Democrat Republican club, then I don't think he could have. I think there was a plan to maybe use the emergency broadcast system. I think they told him no. All of the normie people are starting to talk about adoption now. And they're using way numbers bigger to me. Raul Powell is talking like 100 to 500x or something like that, like 100x more users, 100 to 500x more users. I'm like,
yeah. Once, I mean, I don't know what I'm talking out my ass, but like I can kind of see the big picture of what's coming. To some extent, like, I mean, it's going to be insane. The development and the projects that are launched over the next few years. I mean, the NFT thing was a big deal, and, it's going to be something else, but I mean, there's going to be practical use cases. like you know about Syscoin and the developers, and they have a company where they basically onboard businesses, and they're putting them on Syscoin. They're using Syscoin to create all their tokens and everything. I mean, that's real world stuff.
Yep. And when we get back to it, man, I've been in that Syscoin Discord a lot. And I know that when they have an NDA, they don't talk. So when they don't talk, I go in there and talk. And then the non-BCF people, the freelance developers, they'll all start trying to FUD me because they don't want everybody to know the information that I put out.
Yeah, I've seen everybody kind of doesn't know how to take you or thinks you're crazy or whatever. And
yeah, well, if you really seen some of those conversations, it's either I know what I'm talking about and the devs don't, or no one does.
What do you think? You think
it's not they do and I don't? It's either I do or no one does, because they're arguing against USD price manipulation the way a lawyer argues, not the way a curious developer would argue trying to find a hole.
So you think the Syscoin devs know all this? No, or
yes, yes. I don't.
Do you think they're like in bed with the bankers or whatever, or do you think they're just?
No, it's not ready yet. I have fundamentally had some of my social media stuff, like, what do they call it? Shadow ban. So I have put out information in venues, and I have in an electronic manner. Got to remember, I was a military intelligence guy. I know there's shit on my phone that doesn't belong there because I didn't put it there. I know somebody put it there. I don't care. Okay. I'm fundamentally certain that my communications are being monitored. The manner in which I do this is with my pants off, and I make them watch. So I know I'm not doing anything illegal. I also know how to automate a legislature. And I started throwing the book out for free because somebody who tried to take, like, you could take my intellectual property if I make it intellectual property, but when I don't, you can't. So I'm certain that that's how you automate a legislature. I'm certain I threw that out the window for free. And then I got my social media accounts banned. Okay. They just don't travel anymore. No one sees them all of a sudden. It's like, yes, that means I am correct. It's very difficult to get anybody from the War Department to call you and tell you you're onto something. They don't. They'll tell you to shut the fuck up quietly. That's how I know I'm onto something. I live in the real world. Until somebody tells me no, the answer is yes. So once I am now getting affirmative pushback on all my Twitters, and my LinkedIn account was real popular until it got shut the fuck down.
So it looks like you're over the target, sounds like.
Correct. So now I'm not worried about it too much.
Well, man, I really appreciate it, and I'll let you go. But
no
thanks for coming on.
Well, that's it. That's the whole thing. I thought this was a great episode. Go listen to Donnie's show, the Direct Republic podcast, and go check out his website, the nullhypothesisofpolitics.com. And if you want to check out the Mises Caucus, visit takehumanaction.com. Thank you.